Hi, my name is Jason, and I just compared every single video game that I have ever played. What does that mean? So I created a piece of software that I just called Jason's Image Compare that was originally inspired by the Pairwise Image Compare software that I believe you can still access online, where essentially you upload a set of images and then compare every single one of those images against each other. So you'll see two images presented to you, let's say image A and image B. And then you pick which one of those two you like more. And then you'll see maybe image A and image C, and you pick which one you like more. And at the end of the image compare, every single image will have gone up against every single image. And at the end, it spits results back out at you based on which images you clicked more than others. So essentially, I went through every single video game I've ever played, compared it against every single other video game I've ever played, picked which one I liked more in over 100,000 one-on-one comparisons, and at the end, the image compare essentially gave me my ranking for my favorite games of all time. Except it's not technically my rank, it's not a ranking I made, it's a ranking made by math based on the biases that I fed the image compare. And what I want to do with this ranking is what else but turn it into a little video series here. One video a day for the entirety of 2024, I'm going to upload a video on this channel talking about a game from the ranking, starting from number 366 all the way up to number 1 at the end of the year. I did intentionally plan to do this on a leap year to squeeze one extra game in there. Very happy about that. I even created these little superlative categories to sort of represent when a game really resonates with me in a particular area, so maybe if a game is ranked lower than other games, I can still really push to the front an aspect that I really appreciate about it. They're not going to be very long, probably about 60 seconds each, but by the end of the year, I think it'll hopefully be a very satisfying little series of my taste in games, at least for me. I have to admit, I'm not really doing this for content, which is why it's going to live on this channel instead of any other channel. This is just a personal project for me and my personal creative fulfillment, something I want to look back on in the future and kind of appreciate how far I've changed as a person and appreciate where I was when I was 24 years old sitting on this chair. Now there are some more technical things that I want to talk about real quick, just for anyone that might be interested in them. First of all, if you're familiar with this sort of image compare format, you're aware that it's possible for things to tie. And yeah, I had a ton of ties in my ranking. But there will not be any ties in this video series. Any ties that existed, I went and broke them up manually. And also, I referred to it earlier, this took me nearly 3 months to go through every single comparison. This was over 100,000 image comparisons I had to do to get my final results. So I really wanted to make sure that I got it right and the final results that you're going to see in this series truly reflected me. So I actually kept a little Google Doc on my phone of compares I did where I was unsure of the choice I was making. You know, maybe it was a really close call that I wanted to revisit later without spending too much time on it in that moment. Maybe I was really in the mood for a specific game one day, but I knew that on most days I would choose the other game. So I chose the game I was in the mood for today, but wrote it down so that later if I was like, I was just in a really weird mood, I actually want to reverse that decision. I gave myself the freedom to do that. So the final results are almost entirely the result of the image compare I did, but tweaks were made throughout as needed based on things like that document. And the last thing I want to talk about, by far the most exciting topic, I want to quickly talk about the rules for games that made it into this ranking. Frankly, if I included every single game I've ever played, I never would have been able to finish the comparison. The number of compares you have to do grows exponentially the more items you have, so even just including 50 more games, 100 more games would have made the workload exponentially worse, and I wouldn't have been able to make it in time for 2024. I really wanted to make sure that every game in this ranking is a game that I truly understand in as complete of a way as I can. And to that end, games had to meet a certain set of rules in order to qualify to be in this ranking. Now, there was no one-size-fits-all answer for this, so all of these rules get bent and broken as needed in very specific cases, but for the most part, the games on this ranking follow these 3 rules. First rule is I have to finish the game. Nothing that I haven't finished yet, nothing that I stopped playing halfway through. Now, there are a few games on this ranking. I believe there's 3 games where I haven't finished them, but that's because they literally aren't done yet. They have not been fully released yet. Those games I did include just because I didn't want to miss the opportunity to talk about them, because I do really like them. And it's not my fault that I haven't finished them. I'm going to finish those games the millisecond more content for them drops. And there is the question of what do you define as finishing for games that don't really have an ending. Like, multiplayer games are the biggest example of this. And personally, I did put a lot of thought into this, and I did sort of have a structure for how I would decide what counts and what doesn't. Too much detail for this video, though. In general, I just had to play it for a long time. I had to really feel like I understood the game instead of just like dipping my toe into it. 1 week of Left 4 Dead 2 with my cousin, or a couple arcade runs and a fighting game does not count. But playing every single character's arcade mode or putting in dozens of hours into online does count for a fighting game. And having over 2 months in Apex Legends with occasionally returning to it does. And the last thing to touch on with this rule is that even with how strict I was being, the number of games I was going to have to compare was kind of teetering on the edge of being too much for me to handle. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it all in time. So I started being even stricter for some games. There were some games that had substantial DLC content that I hadn't gotten to yet but really wanted to, and decided to leave those games off until I can complete that content. Some games I remember really liking, but I played them so long ago that my memory of them has severely faded, which brings us to rule number 2. I have to remember the game. Yeah, you know, a good amount of games from when I was like 15 and younger, I don't have great memory of all those games. And if I really didn't have enough memories to go off of to make really informed choices when doing the comparisons, I ultimately left them off. But the bigger area where this comes into play is stuff like Halo or Call of Duty. I played a ton of Halo and Call of Duty growing up at friends' houses, but I can't really remember which Call of Duty or which Halo each of those specific instances was. So even if I can generally say I really like playing Halo 1, 2, and 3, I can't compare them because I don't remember which of those games I was playing at any given time with my friends. And the last big rule is that I had to play an official copy of the game on an official platform. Basically, just my fancy way of saying no piracy. Cool? Cool. There are some more minutia rules I had, like in the vast majority of cases, DLC expansions do not count as independent games. All this is to say, if this is not clear, this is a project that means so much to me personally. I'm really passionate about it. I'm really putting a lot of myself into it. And it is really just for me and my own fulfillment. But any of you that are along for the ride as well, welcome, thank you. And I hope you have fun, because I sure did.